And then the other thing I want to talk about is hip impingement or impingement syndrome in your hip. So I find that, again, this has to do a lot of times with tightness. So if the tissue surrounding your hip joint is too tight, you don't have that good freedom of motion, right? Everything's just restricted and it's just kind of crammed in the socket. So this is where your psoas really comes into play. Well, it comes into play, hopefully you can start to see that with kind of all three of these places that we've talked about, right? So your psoas attaches into your lumbar spine, so it's going to affect what's happening at your lumbar spine. It crosses over kind of the front part of your SI joint, so it affects, it's affected when we have SI instability or something happening with your sacrum. Your psoas is absolutely affected and will usually be tight. It crosses your hip joint, so it's affected when we have something happening at your hip. So releasing your psoas is so crucial and so paramount. I pretty much release this on every single person that has something happening in this zone. And I'm going to show you guys how to release this with the ball in the guided release. But a lot of times, so hopefully you can start to see that when we bend your knee all the way in towards your chest and hug your knee in towards your chest, this muscle that's laying on the front of your hip needs to fold. So it needs to kind of fold in on itself. So I find that a lot of times when people have that pinching in the front of their hip, like if you bring your knee in towards your chest and it feels really pinchy or impinged, not always, but a lot of times this hip, that releasing your psoas can alleviate some of that pinching in the front of your hip. So, but you can have impingement syndrome for a lot of reasons. Labral tears are a big part of that, but also just tightness in your psoas and tightness in all of that hip musculature can really lead to the impingement of your hip joint.